Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Pink Floyd Completion Project. Today, we are looking at the Wall live tour. Now, unlike last time, I'm not going to be, going through the story again, because I did that in my last video. My last video was 37 minutes long, and it took me 2 days to upload because my internet sucks. Hopefully this is no longer than my Animals review. Hopefully, and there's differences between the Wall album and the Wall live album. That's gonna be obvious, but they also did a bunch of shit with the live visuals that I'll be talking about, so that's why this video will wind up being longer than the typical 15 minutes. I don't intentionally do 15 minutes, that just seems to be the way it works out. So, the Wall live, they would build a friggin' wall on the stage. Now, at the beginning, the wall is partially constructed. The sides stay constructed the entire time, I'm pretty sure. I haven't watched the footage in a long time. You're not really able to tell from the footage to begin with because it's a bit shit, but I'm still going to link it in the description. So the two sides are built, and then you've got an angle in the middle that frames out their signature circular projection screen, and then it starts with the song Vera Lynn, which is actually kind of a little bit better than the end of Outside the Wall on the album, just solely because of how it connects thematically later on, but I'm still not, I still prefer the studio opening, for personnel on the tour, not only did you have the Floyd, but you had a quartet of male singers, and each member of the Floyd, Dave, Roger, Nick, Rick, they all had, a counterpart as a touring musician. Returning from the Animals tour was Snowy White on guitar. For Roger, you had Andy Brown on bass. For Nick, you had Willie Wilson on drums. Two of these guys, I believe, played on Snowy White, definitely, and Willie Wilson definitely played on Rick's solo album. I don't know. I don't think Andy Brown played bass on that album. I could double check my notes, but I'm not doing that right now. And you had Peter Wood on keys, and the quartet of singers was Joe Chimay, Stan Farber, Jim Hawes, and John Joyce. So, 12 people to play this damn show. It's a very musically complex album, and you listen to it, it is almost studio quality, but it is not overdubbed at all, to my knowledge. And then so it starts with Vera Lynn playing over the loudspeaker, and an MC sort of does, not like a rapper MC, I forget what MC stands for, but I was gonna say musical composer, that ain't it, and it's like a radio DJ, and he would go up and do an intro monologue, and it was a bit drawn out, and he would start going over safety stuff, but the Floyd would cut him off when they hit In the Flesh. Or was it the Floyd? No, In the Flesh was actually the supporting musicians in life masks of each member of their respective member of the band, playing In the Flesh. So the first song is not actually Pink Floyd, it's Pink Fraud. I think that was funny. And it's a fucking great performance. It's slightly longer than the album version, but basically every song is slightly longer than the album version, which adds up quite a bit over time. And then they go into, it basically continues in album order. From here on out, I'm basically going to say what happened in the live show, and like little differences and little things that I noticed about the live version. So like with every song had a couple of additional bricks added into the wall. Remember this idea of the tour spawned from Roger going, I wish I could just build a wall between the band and the audience and we could perform behind the wall. So, so yeah. Yeah, and Roger's vocal performance on most of this sounds really good. Um, and on the Thin Ice, I think Dave and Rick do harmonize a little bit. I think that happens a couple times throughout the album. It could just be the quartet. I'm not 100% sure. But it's one of those things where it's probably like some people will probably hear it, some people won't. I definitely think I heard uh, Dave and Rick harmonizing at one point on a couple times on the album, and certainly I believe I heard them harmonize on the Thin Ice. At the end of Brick in the Wall Part 1, Rick does some fucking cool piano shit at the end of Brick Part Wall, and you can tell that the audience anticipation for Brick 2 is palpable. It is palpable. You can feel that shit. Right? Because a lot of them have heard the album. Right? This was, not even 6 months after the album was released. This tour didn't happen in 1979. They didn't do a Genesis Lamb Lies Down on Broadway thing and tour it first and then go in and release it. But there's projections of animations by Gerald Scarfe. He created all of the animations. He and his team created all of the animations for the tour. And then, excuse me. So that was, so those were projected on the circular screen, and, later on, as the wall got progressively more built, basically in the second half of the show, they were projected onto the wall itself. And Happiest Days of Our Lives, the crowd is hyped for Brick in the Wall Part 2, and then in Brick in the Wall Part 2, it's basically the same as the studio version up until Snowy White does a second guitar solo after Dave's, and then Rick does a fucking cool-ass B3 thing, and it sounds awesome because it's fucking Rick. The intro to Mother almost sounds a little bit like Wish You Were Here, but later on when you get to The Show Must Go On, the melodic tie back in is a lot more obvious. And the crowd really doesn't trust the government, and the first guitar solo of Mother is extended a little bit, noticeably. Empty Spaces is extended / replaced with What Shall We Do Now. Is basically Empty Spaces. Empty Spaces is still here, but the last two lines are changed. You don't get the how should I complete the wall, and then it smacks you in the face with Young Lust. It doesn't have basically it goes, should we set out across the sea of faces in search of more and more applause, and then you hear this freaking great dun 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 dun, it builds, and then they launch into a bunch of things where it's just hey, should we do all of these rock star cliches? The satirization of rock and roll stars on in the wall is fantastic. I love it. It's hilarious. In a Floyd-like way. Yeah. And then after What Shall We Do Now, Roger finally greets the audience. And then they go into Young Lust, and Young Lust gets an organ solo, which I'm pretty sure is played by Rick. I'm 95% sure. And then, basically, it's just the wall getting built progressively higher, and there's not really any changes until the end of Brick in the Wall Part 3, right, and Goodbye Cruel World. They are separated by a medley of instrumentals from the first disc of the album, because the people putting the bricks on the wall needed more time to complete the wall. Right, because the wall needed to be completed by the midpoint of the show, and then they do Cruel World, and then there would be a a brief intermission, and then they would come back in with Hey You, and that would have Roger in a hole, like up in sort of in the midpoint of the wall, sitting in a hotel chair thing, and like basically, or no, like it's like the band starts performing behind the wall at this point, and yeah. So yeah, they start performing behind the wall at this point. If you look at it, if you look at pictures, there's like a couple of holes where you could see the band, but like it depend, like based on where you were seated would depend on how well you could see the band. Like if you're seated like on either of the far sides, it's entirely possible. Like certainly in the front row, it's entirely possible that you wouldn't be able to see them. Like depending on the venue and such. And the Hey You guitar solo like it's extended a little bit, and it has sort of Pig's energy. Yeah, and then again, no changes apart from again they're doing like what projections there are. They're projecting those animations onto the wall itself, and they've got 3 of them, so it looks slightly wacky. But it was 1980. Like this was basically the biggest rock show for any band ever, like the most ambitious one. Yeah. Yeah. Vera, like the callback to Remember Vera Lynn makes more sense now, or the reference makes more sense now, because that's what the audience would hear as they were filing into the venue. And then Comfortably Numb, Roger's portion is a little bit more subdued than the studio version. And then, of course, and Dave, this is one of the coolest portions of the show. So Roger would come out dressed in like a doctor's lab coat, and he would do his portion of the song, his verses. And then when it was time for the chorusing of the guitar solo, a light shot up on the top of the wall, which was like 30 feet high, and it's Dave standing on top of the wall, and he just fucking rips the solos, man. They're so fucking good because it's David fucking Gilmour. Like they're so good. It's an amazing moment, even on the shit quality footage that we do have of the moment. It looks cool as fuck. Right? And the second solo is extended, and it sounds fucking cool as shit, of course. Yeah. Yeah, it's fucking awesome. The show must go on has an additional verse at the front. And then after that, there's a second intro monologue from like whatever MC would introduce the show at the beginning, except he's got like zombie makeup on, right? And then they do in the flesh part 2, or in the flesh without the question mark, and it's like the satire of that song makes a lot more sense in the live context. I will admit it makes a lot more sense in the live context. It also makes more sense in the movie, which is what we're looking at next time. Yeah. And then Roger does some crowd work and his signature dolphin noises, and then Roger and Dave also trade off, one line is Dave, second line's Roger, third line's Dave, fourth line's Roger, and then Rick does a fucking great thing, and then Waiting for the Worms is where you get the famous walking hammers, which is what's on my shirt. And then, like, it's basically the same, like, with projections and stuff, it sounds basically the same as the album from there. Very little changes, apart from Outside the Wall. That has a much more uplifting feeling. And at the end of the trial, they would go tear down the wall, and then these weird mechanical devices that they had to physically make for this would knock down the wall physically, and it's quite the spectacle. Again, quite the spectacle, even in the shit quality footage that we have. And it's again, the quality of this footage. The footage looks like it was sat in the Mekong for a couple of years, and then it traveled through somebody's asshole. That's how bad the quality of the footage is. But it still looks fantastic. What little you can see is still awesome. And so the wall falls down, and then everybody, the quartet, the band, their backup musicians, everybody sings Outside the Wall on acoustic instruments, and then everybody walks off stage, and that's the end. There was no encore, there was no stuff before they did the wall in its entirety. It was basically, in the flesh to Outside the Wall. That was the live show. That was the set list. So yeah, it's excellent. Unfortunately, it's the live version of The Wall is not on streaming. You can find it pretty damn easily on YouTube. It's not difficult to find. You can find the footage pretty decently easily on YouTube. So yeah. So that's gonna do it for this episode of the Pink Floyd Completion Project. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. If you have something, if you want to express your opinion on this album, if you have something to add, if you actually attended one of the live shows, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to continue along this musical journey with me, please feel free to subscribe. If you want to hear me talk about something other than music, I have a podcast called Dorkies with two of my buddies. I will link the most recent episode of that in the description. And if you want to hear what I'm listening to that day, or a 15-second segment at least, you can follow me on Instagram at Sean_Heastern1979. And with that, I would like to thank you all very much for watching. Next time we are looking at the Wall movie. Skipping over a release if you know your stuff, but we'll get back to it, don't worry. But yeah, so yeah, with that, I'm going to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.